Michael.
Hello, you're fired.
Yeah, so I forgot to write an actual script for this video, as more or less the instant I recovered from COVID, I had to go back to classes and work, and oh holy shit, this semester's gonna suck. So because of that, and also my general lack of ideas as to how to approach Snapshot TV reviews, and the fact that I have less to say about most of these shows than I thought I would, this video is going to consist of several very quick reviews that are not going to have anywhere near as much nuance to them as the movie reviews did, which is to say none at all. The shows that I want to talk about more will get longer videos at some point. This also won't count any shows that started in 2021 but are still running at the moment, so no JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or Demon Slayer Season 2. Anyway, in order of worst to best, here we go. Yeah, it's just not funny anymore. So here's the thing, I like this show for the most part. It's one of the very few American comedies that I actually find in any way funny. But the problem is that it just didn't need to go for 8 seasons, and it really does show. The thing that makes season 8 of Brooklyn Nine-Nine suffer the most is the attempt to juggle more serious topics with its lighthearted tone. Now on the one hand, the show is not a stranger to this sort of commentary, and has in the past done it pretty well. But this time it feels disjointed. There are very good parts of it, like Rosa Diaz's resignation, but most of the attempts at saying anything are just... I don't know. I just feel like it could have done with a lot more work, which is a shame because the first episode of the season where Jake gets a mega wake-up call about the corruption in the NYPD worked really well, but the rest of it? Now to this season's credit, it's not as bad as season 7, probably due to its brevity, but the humor is stretched and thin, as is a lot of the attempted commentary. I had hoped when they announced that they were rewriting the season that the show would go out with a bang, but I guess not. I am not joking when I say this movie would be higher up if not for that finale, like at least a spot or two. I will start off by saying that I was not as keen on this show as a lot of people were. Sure, there was a lot to like about this show. Tom Hiddleston was charming as ever as Loki, Sylvie was a pretty compelling foil for him, as was Owen Wilson's character whose name now slips my memory. And of course the introduction of both the multiverse and a character who is highly implied to be Kang the Conqueror are massive pluses and will shape the MCU for a long time to come. The problem for me, however, is bits of this show really dragged for me. I get the feeling that this did not need to be a miniseries, or at least not as long a one as it had been. If this had been a 2.5 hour movie, or even a 4 episode miniseries, I think it could have had a chance of being one of the best MCU projects in a while. But as it is, the pacing of some episodes is frustratingly slow, particularly episode 3. It seems to be trying to do the sit with characters and just watch them interact thing. When I last criticized the show, someone on my TikTok comments made a comparison to Pulp Fiction's long dialogue scenes, but there's something missing from them to make them work? What is that? I genuinely wouldn't be able to tell you. But then, in the finale, Loki and Sylvie kiss. Loki kisses himself. Themselves? What's the grammar for this situation? Either way, it was fucking annoying. I mean, come on. At least when Sliders did this plotline in the 90s, they had the good sense to make sure that Quinn Mallory didn't know he was kissing his female counterpart until after the fact, at which point he had a bit of a gamer moment about it, but you know, you would too, right? So yeah, a solid show that was crapped on by an annoying finale. WandaVision. Yeah, I'm gonna get that stuck in your head again.
Fuck you.
This is a show that has weirdly sparked more frequent and more violent arguments in my social media comment sections than anything else not Snyder related that I've ever said. Though these arguments tend to boil down to some people going, it's shit, isn't it? And others going, nuh-uh. Of the two camps, I'm mostly in the latter, but with some reservations. First of all, from a directing perspective, this show is largely the most interesting stuff I've seen from the MCU ever. My brother insists that Internals tops it, but I haven't seen it yet, as of me writing the script. The sitcom pastiches that take up the majority of the series are very lovingly done, even if a little ruined by the fact that you can kind of tell how some of them were faked. I don't know, I just think the film look of the earlier episodes wasn't very well faked. I mean, I know it can be faked to some serious degree because Knives Out had me temporarily fooled, but this is also just such a small nitpick as to be entirely irrelevant. I don't know why I'm spending so much time on it. What does help create the old sitcom feel more than the visual design, however, is the direction of the sitcom stuff and the direction of when the facade temporarily drops. That moment in the first episode where Mr. Hart is choking and his wife is begging Wanda to stop it through a forced smile is genuinely one of the scariest things I saw on TV in 2021 outside of my rewatch of Twin Peaks. The main running story throughout the series of Wanda's emotional damage is also super compelling and speaks a lot to how trauma affects us. So what brings down the series? The ending, of course. Now there's a lot of it that I did quite like, such as Monica Rambeau becoming Photon and moments such as that. But the CGI fight scene that takes up most of the final episode is just not interesting, and not a very satisfying way of wrapping up the plot. Now I understand they were against the wall, what with COVID and everything and rewrites and shit, but it's still just, Throw in that the series occasionally feels a little slow in the middle, and you have a show that I really genuinely liked quite a bit, but is weighed down by a couple of big flaws. I don't know, man, as I said in the last part of this retrospective, I'm pretty big on this show, but for some reason I just didn't feel as invested in this season. There's a lot of interesting stuff in the first half during the Class 1A, 1B showdown, but after that, Look, I like the concept of the Meta Liberation Army and all that it represents, and for a couple of episodes there was some really neat tension with Hawks being a double agent in the army. But for the most part, this part of the season is just not very interesting, especially the fight between the army and the League of Villains. It feels like a massive prelude to something far more interesting, which I suppose it is, given that there's some massive shit in the manga coming out that's gonna kick some major ass. But what was good about this season? Well, quite a bit. As I said, I really like the battles between the UA classes, as there was a lot more time for the characters in Class 1B to shine there. The reveal of Black Whip was of course pretty awesome, and the episodes dealing with Todoroki's incredibly fucked up family were of course illuminating, adding to the lore of why he's so messed up and dangling the presumed dead sibling Toya in front of the viewers. Manga readers chat know what that's all about, ayo! And of course, the episodes covering Shigaraki's origins might be worth a review on their own at some point. But for a quick review, I don't have much more to say. I was just a little bit underwhelmed with this season by whole, and enjoyed World Heroes missions so much more. But knowing what Season 6 will have in store, if it's paid off well, then I will probably forgive it. This is an absolute banger for the most part, but it is brought down a couple of spots by the fact that it's a little inconsistent. There are a couple of stinkers in this series. What is it that makes this show so damn interesting? It's the diversity in art styles and animation across the 9 episodes. While it would have been awesome in its own right for this to be a serialized story that follows a single story, opening the series to multiple creators gave so many people the opportunity to bring what they love about Star Wars to us with their own flair and style. The result is a truly unique series that'll have something for everyone to love, and it is one that I do need to rewatch at some point. Now, as I said, there are some episodes that don't fare very well. Let's face it, the one about the Tatooine pop punk band who don't get killed by Jabba because they can play a damn good emo tune is pretty silly. There are also a couple of episodes where the English dub undermines it violently. Look, I like Alison Brie, but her voice acting in The Twins was not good, which is a shame because that's actually my favorite episode of the series. Now, are there better episodes in Visions? Yeah, there are, but The Twins is my favorite due to the absolutely mental fight scene that takes up most of the episode. I mean, this guy stands on an X-Wing, puts a super kyber crystal in his lightsaber, and then he jumps to hyperspace and fucking cuts the Star Destroyer in half with his lightsaber at light speed while also saving his sister from corruption. It's absolutely batshit insane, and I loved every second of it. So yeah, if you've not watched Star Wars Visions yet, what are you doing? Check it out. Oh, and by the way, if you're one of those fuckwits who complained about Japanese culture being in Star Wars, A, George Lucas based a lot of the first one on Akira Kurosawa films, so you're just objectively wrong, and B, it's a science fiction show. Why the fuck do you have to be racist about it, fucking weirdo? I will admit this ranking is on account of my somewhat shady memories of the series, because I remember when I was watching it, I was having a hell of a time. But now most of it is faded from my mind, save for the key moments, so I will do my best to reconstruct my thoughts on it. The main problem I have with this series is that Kali is not a very compelling villain. The Flag Smashers is a concept that I do quite like a lot, as it adds nice little depth to the world of the Dark 5 Years, and is an interesting commentary on, if I'm reading this right, the way refugees are treated by world governments. However, Kali herself is just not interesting. I don't know, I just didn't find myself particularly interested in her as a person, especially since far more interesting stuff was happening around her. The rest of the show I liked. I did not expect this show to be as politically charged as it is, as my opinion was that Disney has as much interest in being politically active as a herring does with the Albertan prairies. This does continue to be my general opinion of the company as a whole, but that's neither here nor there. So seeing a show is deeply entrenched in the discussion of civil rights, how black people and refugees have been treated by governments and societies around the world, and the treatment of of veterans was definitely a refreshing change of pace for the largely apolitical MCU in general. And for the most part, from what I can tell, these themes were handled with tact and class, especially through the story of Isaiah Bradley and the walking white privilege metaphor that is John Walker. However, discussions of such themes with any adequate nuance would not fit into a 2-minute quick review, so I am going to have to keep going. What else did I like? Bucky and Sam's chemistry, of course. Going into this series, I knew their interactions was going to be top-class comedy, and I was pleased to find that I was right. But it was also nice to see them becoming friends more than just hating each other right up until the end of the show for comedy points like so many buddy series of the likes can do. The characters themselves are also fleshed out rather nicely, with Sam struggles to make ends meet and Bucky's list of people he needs to make amends with. It's good shit. Yeah, this is pretty good, and my feelings on the show will probably solidify more if I rewatch it. I will also probably be actually able to formulate better thoughts on the show than this if I rewatch it, so we're just gonna leave it at that for now. God damn, I had a lot of fun with this one. Clint Barton is a character that I have loved in the MCU since the first Avengers movie, and I've been consistently pretty annoyed with how much he got sidelined, shat on by the fanbase, and also just written in weird ways. I mean, yeah, I get Ronin is a thing in the comics, but the motivation they gave him in Endgame for going rogue? Kinda bad. However, the Ronin thing drives this show forward, but it works really well. Having the plot of the series being, whoopsie, it's the consequences of your actions, makes a lot of sense for the setup we've been given across the MCU for Clint, and it grants us a rare opportunity for us to actually see how Clint feels about his life as an assassin and an Avenger, and it seems like he hates both, just viewing it as a job that he has to do. And at the same time, he has to keep his eye on this annoyance that has gotten in the way of him facing his mistakes and is by the end of the series unavoidably tangled with them. Kate Bishop. Who doesn't love Kate Bishop? Haley Steinfeld's portrayal of the character is pretty much perfect. Now, granted, I don't know much about Kate on account of the fact that I'm illiterate, but here, she's just such a fun character. There's something relatable about her dumbass young adult gets roped into shit and is just going with it thing. Level with me, guys. That's how we all feel right now. But her excitement about working with Clint and finally meeting her hero is also super endearing. If she is to be the next Hawkeye in the MCU, count me in. Also, this entire interaction she has with Yelena, absolutely perfect. However, this does bring us to the final episode and the Kingpin reveal. It's been said over and over by others, but I will say it again. Wilson Fisk only appearing in the final episode to get his ass kicked by a 22-year-old when he's nearly killed Daredevil multiple times is kinda silly. Now, I'll level with you, I don't care as much about his dress sense, as I know that's a thing from the comics and Vincent D'Onofrio chose that, so, you know, I don't care about that. But structurally, having him only in the final episode and using him as a cheap cliffhanger for the second to last episode does not make for the gripping TV they thought it might. They did apparently film flashback scenes with Maya and Fisk and a couple of other odds and sods with him in it, and I think it would have been so much cooler if he was known as the main threat throughout. We would have known something that Clint and Kate didn't, and it would have added suspense. Insert generic comment about Hitchcock and the bomb under the table here. And yeah, him getting shot in the face off screen was annoying. Like, no duh, he's not dead. But honestly, fuck the show for even doing the, oh, is he dead? Tune into our next show to find out bullshit. It's just kind of cheap. But other than that, I had so much fun with this show. This is a show I was initially not going to watch. Not out of any disinterest in the concept, I was just sick of the memes about it on TikTok. But then I did watch it, only a mere 3 months late, and I was hooked immediately. The thing that makes Squid Game work isn't just the concept. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love the concept. The idea of take something childlike and make it something sinister is definitely nothing new. But the idea of having a group of very rich people making people kill each other in perverted child's games for their own entertainment, holding 45.6 billion won in front of them to guard them on, that's about $40 million US by the way, is effective regardless. It provides a lens on the idea, one of social commentary. The metaphors for the military system and how the disgustingly rich and famous can basically do whatever the fuck they want can hardly be missed, and are definitely worth more scrutiny in a better video than this. However, the thing that truly makes the show shine are the characters. From the first moments of the show, the one driving the show forward is Song Gi-hun. The first half an hour of the series is an extremely efficient character study into Gi-hun, and by the time he's in the games, we have a very good idea as to how he reacts to whatever is thrown at him. From there, it only gets better. Watching the relationships rise and fall over the games is gripping television, and every single one of them is expertly crafted, with the possible exception of Deok-soo, a standard asshole character, and Min-yo, who's just insane. Even Ji-young, who only becomes the focus for one episode, is such a brilliantly written character that you go from hardly knowing who she is to bawling your eyes out when she thanks Sae-byeok for playing with her. And it is that depth that keeps the show going. Under normal circumstances, it could be understandably inevitable to become desensitized and jaded to the death after a couple of episodes, but the strength of the characters keeps you hoping against hope that some of them will make it to the end, dreading watching them die, and cheekily hoping that one or two of them will cop it along the way. And this is what makes the relationship between Gi-hun and Sung-woo so engrossing. Sung-woo is by a long way the most conflicted of the characters, both in his internal conflict and how I feel about him, because he doesn't want to kill anyone, but he also knows he can't afford to allow his conscience to control him. While this leads him to do some terrible things, there was no need for him to kill Sae-byeok when she was already on her way out, and why the fuck did you do that, man? I'm still hurting from that, Jesus fucking Christ! You can at least understand why he did it. Nothing in this show happens just for shock value or drama like some other shows where everyone dies that I can think of. It's all driven by the concept and the characters, and brilliantly so. I have made promises up and down the comment sections of my videos that I would be working on a video about this series, and I still intend to do so before the second season comes out. Future Michael, that's come and gone already, so I can't really do that anymore. But I have so far welched on those promises, so this short review will have to do until I can actually get off my ass and write the thing. Sorry, lol. I have done no short order of complaining about the modern interpretations of Superman on this channel, and as you might imagine, my disenchantment with the treatment of Superman in movies and TV since Smallville had led me to believe that this show was just not going to be much good. It doesn't help that I thought that Tyler Hoechlin just doesn't look like Superman. And I'll be honest, I'm still not 100% on him looking like Superman, but if there's one thing that is undeniable, it's that he plays the role perfectly, both as Superman and Clark Kent. He's obviously not at Christopher Reeve's level. He makes little attempt at making Clark look different to Superman, though that could also just be more a directing thing than a Tyler thing, but his acting is never anything but sincere. As Superman, he always comes off as in control, but also kind and affirming. But it's as Clark that Tyler does his best work, balancing the dorkiness that we all know Clark for with a genuine affection for everyone around him that just makes you smile. The writing of his character is also pitch perfect, and it gets the one thing that I've been begging of the movies this whole time right. Above all else, Superman places saving people above anything else, sometimes to the point of possible self-destruction. When it becomes clear that Zod will attempt to take his body over, Superman freely offers to sacrifice himself for the greater good before getting a darn good rousing at from Lois on the matter. He's not good to a fault either though. We learn that he has a habit of listening in on his family to ensure their safety, and that makes him feel more real. Superman isn't just a caricature of a god in this series, he's a person, like he was always meant to be. Beyond that, the premise of the show so far has been really exciting to watch. The overarching plot of the season is of course Zod's plot, and Steel trying to stop it by killing Superman. By the way, how fucking awesome is it that Steel actually got a properly good live action adaptation? But the heart and soul of the show is Clark's family. The plot of him settling in Smallville with them, with Jordan slowly developing his powers and Jonathan coping with being a super kid's brother, is absolutely all top notch, and it leads to some great character moments, such as Jonathan encouraging Jordan to focus his powers when Clark gets in trouble, or Jordan being kind to a very drunk Jonathan even after he'd just ruined his date, and literally any of the handful of family arguments this show has. The other thing I was worried about was the way that Jonathan and Jordan would be written, on account of the fact that the CW can't write teenagers for crap, but the twins are shockingly actually really good. They're melodramatic, sure, but no more melodramatic than your average teenager. It's just damn good television. But after all that, this still isn't my favorite show of the year. That honor goes to... Yes, of all the shows this year, some with outstanding characters, writing, and themes, my favorite show of the whole of 2021 is the anime about the girl who can't talk.
Fuck you.
For those who do not know, the premise of Komi Can't Communicate is simple. Professional loser Hitohito Tadano starts high school and meets the seemingly very aloof girl named Shoko Komi, whom the entire school decides it would be really trendy to simp for to a degree that is honestly pretty concerning. However, what Tadano realizes that the others don't is that Komi isn't just quiet in some attempt to look cool, she's just legitimately terrified of speaking to people. Tadano becomes her friend and vows to help her make new friends. Exceedingly simple concept, right? Absolute banger of a show. Enough that I started buying the manga, because the manga is also really fucking good. The thing that mostly drives the show forward is the core trio that is established by the second episode. We of course have Tadano and Komi, who are both useless at talking to people but for different reasons. Komi has crippling social anxiety, and Tadano's just kind of dumb. I'm sorry Tadano, but it's true. And then there's Najimi Asana, Tadano's childhood friend who is inexplicably able to befriend anyone they meet. The way their personalities bounce off each other in situations that to most would be mundane but are terrifying to Komi, like buying a coffee, say, is a lot of fun to watch, as are the people that Komi befriends over the series. All of them are great, with the exception of 2 of them. Agari needs to chill the fuck out, and Yamai can get fucked. I won't go on too long about the show here because it will be getting its own video soon-ish, he said, knowing that he won't hold himself to that. But this show has it all for me. It's adorable, it's relatable to a point of being kind of sad, and it is, by and large, pretty funny. If it's something with not a lot of stakes but is super entertaining you're looking for, I can't recommend the show enough. Yep, so that's the 2021 retrospective. Sorry this part is so late, but I got my ass kicked by university and life and mental health, so it took way longer than it should have. Anyway, see you next time, whenever that is. Goodbye.